Hi, everybody. Welcome to a special edition of the Esports Research Report. I'm Dr. Stephanie Orme from Emmanuel College in Boston.
And I'm Dr. Brian McCauley here in Jönköping at the Media Management Transformation Center in Sweden. And today's episode is from our conference on health and well-being that was held online through the University of Paris in December. And for this episode, it's a panel, which is the Parental Environment in Esports Careers, with the great moderator that is me. And I think I was selected as the biggest child on the board. But anyway, we have Shae Williams, the founder of the Coalition of Esports, COPE. And we also have Koen Schobbers. He's a former Trackmania esports athlete. And he is the founder of Parents at Play, or of Play. And finally, we have CAPS.dad, Winther, who is father to a bunch of really talented esport players. And is actually a really engaging person also and knows his stuff. So we hope you enjoy the panel from our first conference. Thank you very much.
One word. Is it working? Okay, everyone, welcome to the final panel of our first ever conference. I'm Dr. Brian McCauley. I'm Vice Chair of the network and co-host with Steph Orme of our free educational podcast, the Esports Research Report. And I'm actually here in Sweden, where I am an assistant professor at the Media Management and Transformation Center at Jönköping University, which of course is the city of DreamHack, where every year thousands of parents send their kids off to take part in the world's biggest digital festival. And I have three wonderful guests here to discuss the parental environment in esports careers. We have Shae Williams as the founder of the Coalition of Parents in Esports, aka COPE. We have Koen Schobbers, who is the founder of Parents of Play, and Michael, CAPS.dad Winther, is the founder of the Winther family, where he has had a lot of kids who've been very good at esports. So, Shae, I'll start with you. Welcome, Shae. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and COPE and how it started and what's going on with it?
Thank you very much. Yes, my name is Shae. I'm known by Shaemon online to the gamers. I live in Austin, Texas, and my background is finance and tech. I ended up in Austin, Texas as part of a tech startup. So when I had kids, they grew up playing video games. It was just part of our life, but we were also very active. They played lots of sports. They were into football or soccer, as we call it, and into figure skating. So it was an active house, but my son, I realized, was really gravitating towards competitive gameplay. And I realized that he was also forming some of his best friendships online with kids around the world through that. But when I really paid attention was during Fortnite. When he discovered that at about the age of 13, everything changed. He started planning schedules for when he was going to practice. He started doing well in competitions, both at LAN events and online. But the big eye opener for me was when he was 14 years old and we went to the Fortnite World Cup in New York. And I saw this huge, massive event and I saw the excitement in there. And having grown up in the tech industry, I always hoped my kids found anything half as exciting as I had done in my career. And here I was watching my 14-year-old working out deals with adults, planning his streams, planning schedules. And I'm like, oh my gosh, my kid has already found it. And so I jumped in with him and I thought, okay, you want to do this? Let's go for it. I can help you. But what I soon realized is there wasn't anything to guide me. How did I help him? How did I help him with his marketing, his stream? How did I help him with finding the right team and the right contracts? And all of my best advice came from other parents. So fast forward to COVID and a bunch of parents who had all connected online, we realized that we needed to do something about it. And so that's what we did. Just a little over a year ago, we founded the Coalition of Parents in Esports, which is, we just want to spread the positive message of what we have seen in our kids and our kids' friends about what esports can do for them for everything, education, career, you name it.
Fantastic. Thanks, Shae. So Koen, tell us a little bit about your esports background and Parents at Play.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. So happy to be here. Thanks for the invitation. Yeah, my name is Koen Schobbers, based in the Netherlands. And I used to be a professional player in the game Trackmania, which is not globally very well known, but it's very popular in the Europe continent. And in that game, I was third of the world at the World Championships in 2013, always participated in the top 10 globally at all events, and been playing that game professionally for about 10 to 11 years, also being the first gamer in the Netherlands, esports player in the Netherlands, to actually be recognized and get a status from the National Olympic Committee in the Netherlands, which was pretty cool to combine my medical study with my esports career. So I always combine it with school. But eventually, throughout my career, I had some problems with my mom, and that's where Parents of Play originates from. Because when I became a professional player in 2007, I was 15 years old. Of course, my parents had no idea, especially my mom. My dad was pretty much interested and was sitting next to me. But I had problems with my mom to communicate about it, to understand each other. She didn't know, or wanted to know what I was doing, and her friends were pretty negative about it. So it just hurt our relationship pretty bad. And eventually, in time, you become older, and we started to communicate again, thanks to some books she has read, and thanks to me actually appearing in the media. And then I was like, gaming and esports is getting a lot more popular nowadays. We're talking about 2014, 15, 16. And I'm pretty sure that my mom and I are not the only ones that struggled with this situation, or are struggling with this situation. So basically what I decided to do is in 2016, organize a couple of workshops for parents, just very open, general workshops to explain them our story. And from there, it basically took flight. And then in 2019, I came with the idea of Parents of Play, make it more of a structure and something more serious. And then eventually in 2020, in March, registered it as a company. And from that moment onwards, we basically help parents to repair, retain, or reinforce the relationship with their gaming children, and make sure they have the best situation at home.
Fantastic. Okay, and finally we have Michael, aka CAPS.dad. But I don't think you're just CAPS.dad, Michael. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and the other kids you have and your experiences of esports?
Yeah, you can say, looking from my perspective today, and then looking at my life, my children started very early when I was 20. We have our first, and of course we took a lot of care of him, and we would do what every parents did. And then we have a girl 4 years after, and then we have another a boy, and then as the big surprise, we have CAPS in the late 2099. When I'm looking now backwards, it's funny because we just lived the life working, a very active life with playing in the real life outside, football, soccer, swimming, handball, all these things. Then, of course, because it's in Scandinavia, we also have a lot of plays with the cousins. So we played on the table, and all wanted to win, of course. And then in some way, there was also all these silly things, technical things of CSGO up to Nintendo and all this. And when I'm looking back, I can see that we have invested in all this, and as an reuse parents, because we have all this gears, we have all this in the ceiling. So now I can see, this is 1 year, this is another Christmas, and all this. What I didn't know was that the internet, in some way, we have internet because I'm also finance and computer, and very interested. Started at work with a Macintosh, so we were very early at the job to do this. But I didn't know that my kids actually also was inspired by this, all these computers. And when I'm looking back, I can see the 40 years of development in the IT industry, from making the computers like brick to brick in a Legoland, and then going to making the programming, and then suddenly use it. It's very sophisticated, like CAPS, and his brother before him educated him in Dota 2 in Rise. all this I have learned in the last 4 or 5 years. Why? Because I have the chance to join Rasmus in my late years. So you live your life in the present, and you understand it afterwards.
So, Michael, I'm gonna stick with you for the first question first. Okay, so when we do the podcast, we always ask people, "What's your definition of esports?" Right? So, Michael, it's competitive video gaming. What would you add to that definition from your perspective?
In some way, it's a little like if you look at this like the Olympics. You say we all want to go higher, better, stronger, and in some way that's really good for the humans. And if you can understand this perspective to the esports, then you are there. Then you have a lot of people who loves to spring, to swim, to make football, or here to play and win. And then some is very pro, like Koen or my son, and some just have a life playing some days and every days are in the weekends. So the esport, I think, is more for a parent's perspective, it's to show the interest in this. So when your child wants to go to a structured football or soccer, then you go there and join. And if you are esport, then you have to find out what's happening.
Okay, so Koen, how would you add to that when esports from your perspective?
Yeah, so I pretty much agree with Michael, and how I always compare it in general with traditional sports is, so we know esports, competitive gaming, it's the top of the world, right? But when I explain it to parents, I always say, like, imagine your child in front of the house just playing in a garden and playing some soccer. That's like gaming, that's like just casual gaming, enjoying, nothing serious, just for fun, not structured, and in front of the house. But whenever you start to go to a structured, like, imagine your kid goes from playing in front of the house for fun to actually joining a club, being competitive and playing matches once a week, and then maybe he gets scouted, then his level just goes up. But from the moment you're in a structured environment, putting in the effort to actually compete, tournaments, making a team or joining a team, that's the moment for me that you are participating in the esports environment, let's say. And you can be in the esports environment as an amateur trying to become a pro athlete, or a semi-pro, or maybe a top professional athlete. Like, eventually, when I look at esports, the first thing I think about are the professional athletes, like the top of the world. They play the big events, they play for the prize money, they play for big teams, sponsors, audiences. Like, that for me is truly the esports scene. But when I look towards structure and compare it with traditional sports, I like to explain it in this way. So whenever you are getting into the structure of the esports scene, you are kind of into esports. Yeah, you're away from gaming and more towards the esports side.
And Shae, from your perspective with COPE, I mean, how would you add to that discussion and the definition of esports?
What we try to tell parents is it's really just like any other sport, and that it's building confidence, and it's building skills, and it's building community, which is what we want our kids to get out of any activity. And of course, we do think about it with the pros, but just like any other sport, there's also now school leagues, there's community leagues, there's so many different avenues they can go. And the thing that I love about it is that it's building additional skills too. Even if you're not really good at the gaming, you may be really good at the creative side. You may be really great at video editing. So you may be interested in building the game. So it sparks all kinds of interest in technical and creative careers.
I mean, so from all your perspectives, I mean, what are some of the challenges you see? And Shae, let's just stick with you for now. Like, what are some of the challenges for esports that you see from your perspective?
Well, the biggest challenge I see is that most parents just don't know this. They haven't been told what's going on here and what's really happening with their kids. They read the mainstream news headlines, which say all screen time is bad, gaming is a vice, it needs to be limited. And that's what they're fed over and over again. And they're made to feel guilty if they let their kids game. They also assume that, they read the stories about it being, violent games making you violent. We have all the research that says none of this is true. They also assume that their kids are going in their room and playing by themselves and that they're not, they're alone and they're not learning to socialize. I say it's completely the opposite of that. These kids are way ahead in socialization in our digital world. They're learning to communicate in new ways across, that their parents don't even understand. So I think the biggest challenge is just getting that message to mainstream parents. And that was the main reason we formed COPE, was to try to get a different image in the press of the positive things that we're seeing here.
And Koen, do you kind of experience the same thing, or do you look at it as a former athlete? Do you see challenges beyond just expressing things to parents?
I fully agree with what Shae is saying. And when I look like besides what Shae mentioned, which I completely agree with, I also just noticed the frustrations all the time in the discussion. So beside a lack of information, a lack of insight in today's time, basically like digitalization. There's this. I just jump in. Just hit my train of thought. Like there is this great quote of I don't even know, Abram, someone maybe, but it basically says we don't stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing. And the way that I interpreted that quote is that as a kid or as someone that's very young, we are exploring the world. We're adventurous. We're curious. We go out there. We touch the newest stuff. We want to get the shiny things. We just want to explore the world, basically, and everything is great. But whenever we start to get older and older and older, and eventually, there's some other priorities like consistency and having expectations, like knowing what's coming. Security is a great word as well. And what I notice is that some parents tend to lose those habits or those skills or those characteristics that they had in their youth when they're older. So instead of still being curious and adventurous and exploring the world and the new things and digitalization and trying to go along with the flow, they basically stay where they are comfortable and secure and know what's happening. And I think that's something that actually works against them, because especially nowadays, kids grow up in a super digital environment that is totally not comparable before the 92 area. Which is the year I was born, basically, the year that internet, 92, 93, became public. So the best way to connect with children and make sure you avoid discussions, frustrations, which is something I see and I think parents also like to avoid, is go along with the show, go along with them and make sure that the children can also be your teacher. You, as a parent, you can, of course, raise your, that's what you do. You raise your children. You hope to give them or show them the good ways, how to be a good adult, but at the same time, also learn from your children as if they are the teacher, because they experience things in their youth that you as a parent do not get in touch with, for example, because of your own environment. But if you're open to it and explore and adventurous, and then I think you have a great basic understanding and fundamentals to actually connect with your kid and bring each other to the next level.
Okay, so building on that, Michael, you've learned a lot from your kids. What sort of challenges do you see for esports from what you've learned being at events and talking and dealing with your kids?
I think it's they're very quickly learning things, and they don't need to hear the things more than once. So you can say that I'm talking too much. And actually, when I have said things, then I can go weeks and I'm a little anxious that they haven't heard it, but they have heard it. And they just say, yeah, but you said that. So in some way, they are much more, they are more cautious of all the wording, because they know it goes out in the big world and it can have a backlash. So I have learned to let go, to be loose, and actually, as Koen said before, I'm totally agrees to be inspired in this new field, and then in some way be a little childish, because actually I can be the one that I don't know the game. Actually, I can I know the games as from soccer and chess and whatever, but I don't know the technical things. But still, I can understand the game, and I can understand the fans and the gamers when they are playing to each other. So and that's the feeling that I like. Just to hear the amusement and the joy, but also the eagerness when they lose and they make things. They want to be better, to make it better and be great. And I think that's I like all these the small moments where it's tense and which it's another feel, but still I love that.
I mean, my mom loves to tell me the stories of how I used to go on and on about Football Manager, and she didn't have a clue what I was saying. But the difference is Football Manager is not esports, and I was actually 34 at the time. So Koen, how do parents engage in discussions with their kids around esports?
I like, it depends, of course. It depends on the situation that you start with. So if the relationship between parent and kid is very good, then there's not really a problem to start communicating about it and asking questions, and at least you get good responses, like you can actually have a conversation about it. So then it's just simply asking questions. But whenever, and that's the parents that I encounter the most in my work, when there are some problems or the discussions, frustrations, fights, that sort of stuff, it's not as easy, and what I experienced myself as well, to, as a parent, just ask a question to your kid about the game or about what he's doing, because very often you get like a very short, snippy answer, and you basically send out of the room again. So we have a structure that we teach parents. And basically it's like showing interest, but then in 3 questions. The first question is a what question. The what question is just, for example, what game are you playing? Those questions are very short. The answer only takes 1 word. Very often, what game are you playing? Fortnite, or what car are you driving? A Ford or anything. So it's just a starter question to open a conversation. And based on that answer, you can then continue with a how question, which is then, how does the game work? How is the car handling, or how, and then, continue. And the reason that's a phase 2 question is because the answer takes more time to explain. Like, the kid needs to take more time out of the game or out of his day to explain you about what he's actually doing and how it works. And then the final question is the why question. So why are you playing that game, or why are you driving that car? And usually parents in practice start with that question, like, why do you do it? But when the situation at home is not very, very good, they tend to get an answer like, because it's fun, but that's not the answer we're looking for. Like, why is it fun is actually what we're looking for. So the third phase 3 question is a why question. The reason that's the last one is because it goes into motivations and the intrinsic values of a kid. Not easy to talk about when you always have discussions about what you enjoy doing the most, which is gaming in this conversation. And what we actually like to hear is, why are you playing that game? Because it's colorful, it's online, I play with friends, it has great characters, it has items that I enjoy, or suits, or whatever it is. I like to build, I like to be creative. Those type of elements, like game elements, those are the answers that I'm looking for. And whenever a situation at home with parent and kid is not on a decent level, then this is the structure that we talk about in order to get that conversation going. And then it's just repeating what, how, why, what, how, why. And then eventually, once you start to grow towards each other as well, and the discussions and frustrations tend to get less, that is the moment you can really open up and guide your child in that online world.
Shae, from your perspective, what could you add to that? How do you explain esports to parents on how to engage with their kids around something that they may not understand?
Well, actually, I'm going to flip that around first, because while we are an organization of parents, we were founded by parents that had already been enlightened. Most of the people that we talk to right now are the gamers. We are actively followed on Twitter and Twitch by the gamers, and we get questions every day. Our DM is basically a help desk to gamers. The most common question we get is, why do you support your kid, and how do I get my mom to support me? And so that's actually what we spend a lot of our time doing was working with those kids on that. And we first say to them, listen, your parents just want the best for you. And they don't understand that this actually has benefits. So we've got to explain that to them. And they say, well, my mom hates gaming. She just hates it. She doesn't like anything about it. And I'm like, well, have you really shown her what you were doing? Or did you just shove her out of the room when she asked you the question? And it's really interesting. So we have little points that we tell them about how they can talk to their parents about what they're doing with gaming, because they're usually asking questions like, how do I get my mom to let me practice more? How do I get mom to understand that there's a major tournament this weekend and I can't go to grandma's house? And there's all these things, like that. And so we really just talk to them about take emotion out of it, be factual, and also, make a plan. I need to practice this amount of time, so I will make sure I get my homework done so that I have that time to practice. So we really work a lot with the gamers on that, about turning that conversation around and engaging their parents. And for the parents, of course, we just say, get in there. It's fun, and just pay attention to what they're doing. It's just like any other, group. If they're going to play with friends, you're going to want to know who they're playing with. It's the same thing online.
So let's test this theory. Michael, your first two kids played CSGO, which is pretty straightforward, 5v5 shooter, anyone can kind of follow it. And then you had kids who played League of Legends and Dota 2, which are insanely complex games that I have very little idea, no matter how often it's explained to me and I look at it and watch people play. They're very complex. So do you see a big difference in the type of games that are played in terms of parents understanding what's going on? How has it been for you?
Yeah, I think at first we have a lot of arguing, like Shae said before, with the first ones, because they played and were fighting. But there we could go in and say something, like the stop playing, and it worked because these games are short. And it's easy to close the game and say, no, now we have to eat, now we have to go to shopping or whatever. But with the Dota 2 Rise, there we have more warriors, because in the school they were all very, very anxious of all this playing. And when he plays, it's like League. You don't know when it stops. So it's not like football. You can say, okay, I'm finished at 6 o'clock. And then but here it's like football, where you have 1, 2, 3 games to play before you can get. And if he went out, then he would say, I will not go out because then I will leave the game, and this is not fair for my teammates. But we didn't understand that. So we have a lot of arguing, and we said you have to play from 8 o'clock to 10, and then you go to bed. But then with Rasmus, the last one, we made another more balanced way, we think, because we also knew that we couldn't keep these deadlines. So when we said you had to go to bed to 10, it was never practiced, because he would play to 11 if it was, and we would not be we would not take that fight. So with Rasmus, we took another system. We said to him, if you follow the school and if you make your teamwork, you can arrange with yourself how much you will play, and then if you don't do that, you cannot play. And that was that was very structured. And actually, he managed to do this himself, but also his schoolmates and all, they did the same. So they all have a very balanced way of living. And actually, the conflicts was very less. And to make clear agreements with the kids around the playing time, but in balance to something that they understand that you also want, like school or schoolwork, or you have to go to grandma and all this stuff. It has to be understandable. And as Shae said, no feelings. It's you are so invested in this, so you just have to prick to your nose, then you get angry. But you have to be very, very mature.
And of course, the youngest child always gets away with murder, and the oldest child has to fight all the battles. It's going on forever. Your family, my family. So
Yeah,
I'll put
exactly.
I'll put this to Shae. Shae, how can parents support and guide their child that wants to be a professional gamer? You know, the ones with ambitions. How can they help?
Well, the number one thing we say is just to get involved and understand what they're playing, play with them. I think some parents are so shocked when they learn how difficult these games really are. I have some really funny stories about parents the first time they played COD or Fortnite with their friend and being dizzy afterwards, not realizing how much fine motor skills was in it. But I just really tell them to get involved, and there are great programs. That's why we founded COPE. There are so many great opportunities like what Koen is doing, and we wanted to make parents aware of it. So the COPE website is really designed to do that, to help parents get involved. We have our new website is being launched on December 17th. And we want to connect parents to all of the great resources that are available to them, whether it's skills development, health and wellness, getting them into a university program, just getting parents and gamers educated on what they can do with this.
I mean, you talk about sort of parents playing with their kids, and 30 years ago, my dad beat me at FIFA on the Sega Mega Drive / Genesis because he just had to mash the C button. So he got lucky. But I mean, Koen, parents could play Trackmania in theory a lot more easily than a lot of more complex games. So what are some ways they could play or work around the fact that sitting down for League of Legends requires them to quit their job to learn it?
Well, I remember the times that I started playing as a 14-year-old kid, and my dad showed the game to me for the first time. Now, I can tell you the first evening, like the first hour, my dad was actually faster than I was. The next day, I beat him by a couple of seconds already. So my development was a lot quicker than his hands at the time. So it's a very fast-paced game. But I do want to jump back on what actually Shae and Michael said as well, which is something they mentioned is structure. Now, as a kid starting to become professional, I also had the rule at home that if school went well, I was allowed to play games. And I especially had that rule with my mom. So that everything worked out. But also when looking at structure, I do think discipline is very important. So CAPS, like CAPS.dad and Michael explained as well, is once you have strategic and good rules in place, and you then leave a little bit of space to for a child to find his own rhythm and try it himself and what works and what doesn't. I think as a parent, you don't have to control everything. Like, of course, show interest, but not like screen time this, game time this, only these times or hours, or like very set structure. I think a child, and especially a young adult, can perfectly find his own rhythm with the guidance, like with you on top and trying to guide whenever needed. So in my case, I do think discipline is very important to give to a child, where schoolwork has to be done, and then eventually playing games at certain moments whenever they have to train. Dinner time will not always be at 6 p.m. In the Netherlands, 6 p.m. is very popular. So sometimes there's a match at 6 p.m., but then it's about communication between parent and kid. So I completely agree with Shae about the involvement. Know what's going on. Ask those questions, like I mentioned earlier, the what, how, why questions. Try to engage with your child, try to understand, maybe indeed play a little bit of a game with him to understand the game and what's up, but also especially try to make a structure. Like if your kid wants to become that professional gamer, then also approach it like a professional. Like even though there might not be a structure like in soccer where you start in the Netherlands in like the F category, or let's say, I don't know, 10 to 12 and then 12 to 14, you always have guidance and coaches. In this case, you as a parent might be that coach or that guiding factor. So you can make a plan with your kid, like what's going to happen upcoming week, what tournaments are you going to play, what are the training times, and then you can like evolve a whole schedule that we do as well. That includes sleep, study, sports, social life, and playing the game. So using screens is the last S, like 5 S's. And you just fill in the blanks, and then eventually it becomes very clear throughout the week which days and what time slots can be used for gaming and training and matches, and what time slots should be for school or for sports or anything else, because we believe that balance is very important.
I mean, I had a question here on creating realistic expectations, because just like, what is it, 0.01% of professional footballers make it, right? There's a very limited amount of opportunities at the top of esports. And we have a question from the Twitch from Cedric Saris, who says, I like Koen's idea about continuing to play. What would the panel suggest on the role of parents to help high potential players to not burn out from esports? So the question is, how do we manage, and I'll start with you, Koen, how do we manage expectations and stop burnout of these people? Because, you know, we wanted to be astronauts or cowboys. Now they want to be professional esport players.
Yeah, good question as well. Thanks for asking. So it basically goes into what I just mentioned with the 5 S's. So I think as a professional, I was very structured towards these 5 S's. So again, sleep, study, sports, social life, and screens. I think if you want to become a pro, or if you are a pro, these S's are from vital importance. Like as a pro, you of course need to sleep well because of the matches and the training sessions. I believe study is equal to brain development, which definitely helps in playing games. Like the smarter you get, or the more you develop your brains as well using school, the quicker you might get the hang of certain games or certain strategies or that sort of stuff. Sports, fit body is a fit mind. They always say that, which I do agree upon. With good food as well. And social life is important because most esport games are team-based games as well. Even though Trackmania is very often seen as a 1-by-1 or 1 against 1 against 1 against 1 like game, we do play in teams, and we also have team matches. So when looking at gamers that have high expectations, it's first of all for me having that balance right, and then a plan A and a plan B. Like there's also hundreds, if not like hundreds, I think thousands or tons or millions of kids that want to become the next Messi, the next Cristiano Ronaldo. Like that's their expectation, right? I want to be that player. But what do parents do? They guide their child, you know, when they're playing soccer, they're standing next to the line, they help them with their gear, but at the same time, they make sure they study. Like it's like a plan B. In the mind of a kid, it's like plan A is become the next Messi. But also plan B is, I have to do school, I have to educate myself, I have to get my diploma and certificate. So I think it's important to put that into place in conversations with the kid as well. Is, of course, he might want to become a pro gamer or an influencer or a YouTuber or a streamer or that sort of stuff. Like that's the new fireman, astronaut of the current day. So of course, you can help them with it, build a structure around it. And that might be the passion of the kid, but at the same time, of course, school is important for most people. That will be their future, or at least a big part of their future. So always make sure that stays in place. And that comes back to those 5 S's of sleep, study, sports, social life, and screens.
Fantastic. Shae, you talk to a lot of gamers as COPE, which you were telling me. So do you come across these unrealistic expectations that maybe, because, you know, I've played CSGO with a 14-year-old who says he wants to be a pro and I'm out fragging him and I'm like, oh, if you're not beating me at 14, you're not going to be a pro. So how do you negotiate this through COPE with these maybe younger people who might have unrealistic expectations?
Yes, we do see a lot of unrealistic expectations here. And I think part of the reason is that the pros are more accessible to them just because of they feel more familiar. When you see Messi, you're seeing him, you know, on a huge field in front of millions of people. When you're watching your favorite pro here, you're in a Twitch chat. You've probably had a chance to communicate with him. I think it looks more accessible, but it's just as hard to achieve. And I think we spend a lot of time talking to them about all of the other things that are great here. It's not just about being that top 1%. You know, some of the biggest streamers never made it to that top 1%. It's finding what you're good at, what you really enjoy. And we see that with the pros too. When a pro starts to fall off and he's not, you know, doing as well, you know, we will see them tweet, oh, my career's over. I guess I'm going to have to go back to, you know, working in a restaurant. And we're like, no, look what you've been doing here for the last 3 years. Look at the connections you've made and the skills you've learned. How do we translate all of those skills into a career in university, going to university and learning more about what you like, or just a career in the field? And so we really just try to show them that there are many different avenues here.
Michael, did you have some really sort of awkward moments where your kids went, I want to be a pro gamer, and you had to sort of go, oh, how do I negotiate this? How do I support them? You know, what was your experience like dealing with that?
It's I have always listened to what they want, and when they want something which could be good in the way. So, like my daughter, she wants to be a birth doctor, very, very young, and I said it's okay, because then you need very, very high degrees to get into to study in the university. And the same with Christopher, who was very good in the school, Mr. Rice in Dota 2. They wanted this, and as long as they put their energy in the school, we were relaxed, and there were no struggles. With Rasmus, I didn't see it come with Rice, his big brother. He was tournaments in Ukraine and in Taiwan, and was number 2 in the Chinese in the World Championship with in Denmark. Just before Rasmus was threatening to leave our house. And at that time, he said, I will leave at our house when I was 14. I say, I will be a pro. And we say, it's okay. And we were going inside, and we have a little smile. And then when he was 15, then he said the same. And 16, and his brother and him, they were arguing very, very harshly, because they put up the age, because they say we will not have any pros when they are 15, when they're 16. And each year they were putting up the limit. And now I understand that Riot actually helped me there, because I would have been died, and my wife too, if they had left the house when he was 14 or 15. But then his big brother said, but he's good. He's very good. And I said, yeah. He's good to many things. And now I'm in a way where it's not Messi, but it's like Messi in this world. And I'm so happy that it was spoiled to me, not to spoil his dreams and his talent. Because if I have a Messi going around in the backyard making football, and then I have destroyed him, and he had never been playing, what a waste of talent. So I'm happy that I'm not the only one who decides decisions here in life.
Fantastic. So, look, just stepping away from the professional side of it for a second, because, most esports, esports for me is people, and most esports is about the people who don't become professional, when we play with our friends and all these things. So, Shae, I'll start with you. What's the place for kids who just want to play esports with their friends and have fun, and what are some of the benefits they get from not being a professional, from not having that ambition? What do you say there?
Well, I think just having a passion for the community that's here, and just finding your niche and finding what you're really good at is what is so important here. And as we talk about all the time, there are so many different career paths for that. So that's really the most important part about it for me.
And Koen, what would you say about the kids who are not going to be professionals, and what do they get from it?
Yeah, so I quite agree with Shae here. So there's so much more to esports than just being a player. Like, of course, like Shae mentioned just now, which is actually a very good point, that the players are very accessible, the influencers are very accessible. Twitch chat, YouTube chat, whatever it is, you can comment, you can get a reply. But many younger children and youth, they look towards those professional players and might think, oh, that's something I can do. But they don't understand what might happen behind the screen. Like, behind the screen, there's a team involved, like a manager, a coach, a team owner, a analyst, a fitness coach, a nutritionist, a cook, a lawyer, I don't know what. Like, you have so many positions in this industry that are also accessible and actually give you more chance, because you can follow the study route or build experience and get into those positions, that you can still work in the esports industry. Even though you're not the athlete, you can be part of the industry as a whole and actually move it forward, because there are so many opportunities in the esports industry to either launch your own business or help an existing business or help whatever it is in this industry, because it's still growing so rapidly. So when looking or basically answering your question, I I agree with Shae. Like let them find what they're good at. Let them understand that there's more to it than just being a player. And eventually, if you let your kids go a little bit and guide them, I believe they will find their passion, their thing. And maybe the first time, like many students in the Netherlands, they finish high school, go towards university, and I think a big percentage quits in their first year because they figured it's not what I want to do. So sometimes they will make a choice, and eventually it's not the right one. They go back and they will follow another path, and that's fine. They're trying to find their path in life and what they want to do. They should have the freedom to do so, and if it's working in some position in the esports industry, not just being a pro gamer, then I think they have a great future in front of them, because it's an industry that's very, very, very much growing in current times.
Well, I see. There's a question from the Twitch from Narcissa29. Often parental concerns revolve around the amount of hours that kids spend in front of their PC instead of playing traditional sports. I mean, so, Michael, I'll go to you for this first. How do we convince parents that those hours in front of the PC, especially given that Koen just explained to us that there's a lot of other skills learned, how could we convince parents? What do you tell them to say, look, it's not them just wasting their time?
That's a little tough one, because it depends of the parents where they come from. Because if you are in a school where they're sitting very anxious, then the message is different. But all, I think that if they are in what Koen said, that the structured esport environment, then they should look at the community. They should look at the people their kids are talking to, and where they are. Be interested in but where do they live? You live in Denmark. They live in Texas. But what do you know about Texas? So you, in some way, hear small stories of the people, how they interact in the PC scam. So you in some way jump into the screen and see the world which is on the other side of the screen, because that's the involvement and the interest you need to know about your kids. And you would do exactly the same when you were in the soccer field when we were young, because you would ask, but he's the goalkeeper there, where do he come from? He come from this part of the city. Okay, and his parents. So you will do exactly the same, and you should do this also here. But when you have to tell it to the parents, you have to know which part of the city parents you are talking to, because they have very different perspectives.
No, I love that about the structure and the communities and that aspect. And for me, esports is so much better than a lot of the internet that young people experience with social media and other more negative aspects. I mean, Shae, what are other stakeholders that we may need to engage in society to help push esports and convince people that esports is actually the better part of what their kids are doing online and is a good alternative to even just Facebook or Instagram?
Well, exactly. And this actually segues right from what Michael said. Educators, administrators in schools and in community groups, because it's not just about screen time. I mean, in the past, our kids were watching TV. They were spending lots of time on screen time. You go back a century and you can find all kinds of literature that said books are going to destroy our children. They need to get outside and play. I mean, we're always going to have that thing that we think that is taking them away from it. But some of the statistics I love here is when we have we have esports programs in middle schools and high school students. Usually the kids that get involved in those after school programs didn't have any other sport. They were going home. They were having no more social interaction at school. And we know that outcomes for kids are better who do engage in these after school activities. So I think it's that we're reaching a set of kids that were, previously left out of these social engagements. So not all screen time is bad. And there's lots of benefits to it. And we need lots more research on that.
And of course, going with the 5 S's with Koen, I mean, I
totally agree that traditional exercise and sport should always take part. So Koen, what sort of stakeholders from your perspective of your organization and yourself do you think could get more engaged to support esports and help parents understand more?
Yeah, so before I answer that question, I do like to jump on the question of Michael, actually from the Twitch chat, which was about the screen time question. Because when looking at screen time, it has, of course, benefits as well as dangers, negatives, of course, like everything, basically also food. I mean, if you eat bananas the whole day, it's also not healthy. So basically what we do is we have 4 C's, which help us to determine what is a kid doing, and then can we allow more or less screen time based on what they do, which is, are they either creating, are they doing something cultural, are they consuming, or are they connecting? And cultural is like schoolwork. Like if your kid is doing using a screen for school, then is it negative? I don't think so. You know, he's studying, he's making his stuff. Is a kid connecting? Then, especially in COVID times, it's been very beneficial for the mental health of children to connect through screens and playing games and being on Discord. Of course, there's a gray line. Because friends in real life and meeting them in real life is important. Then you have the culture or the consuming side, which is if you are just laying on a couch watching YouTube videos, and you know that can be very relaxing. It can be enjoyable. It can be like Netflix as well. Like parents, you like to use Netflix in the evening as well, and just consuming content, which can be relaxing. So that's a positive, as well as it can be a negative because it can just, you know, it can be a time waster if it's used too much. And then you have creating, like if you are using games or screens to create, like Minecraft is a super creative game, which really helps young children to build that creativity and get a perspective on 3D and building houses and stuff. So would you then limit screen time or give a little bit more? So based on these C's, we basically decide screen time, as well as, like you mentioned, Brian, the 5 S's. So again, check the agenda, sleep, study, sports, social life, fill those in the upcoming week, like what's going to be time dedicated to sleep, study, sports, and social life. And then you have the gaps, the open areas, the open gaps that can be used for gaming, if that is what the kid wants to do at that specific time. And if you do it this way and making that agenda each week, or a little bit of a plan or a structure, a kid cannot play 8 hours a day, for example, because you just have the other S's to take into account. I also think that the screen time rules of some organizations in the Netherlands that are quite old are really outdated. So some say, okay, like 2 hours screen time a day. I mean, come on like the basic school up till the age of 12, they're already using iPads and digiboards and I don't know what, like they already go past the 2 hours screen time on a very young age. So it's not just about screen time, it's about what do they do on their screens, and guide them with that.
I love the idea of Minecraft. I mean, when parents come to me, I say, oh, they're playing too much Minecraft. I'm going, that's brilliant. They're learning how to put some effort in to earn rewards just by mining. But I've got a question here specifically for Michael, and I'm going to expand it to the other guests. But Michael, you've got a League of Legends player and you've got a Dota 2 player. What are the debates like in your house about which game is better?
Yeah. You want me to start a fire?
Absolutely, go for it.
Yeah. The Big Brother, no, they started with a very, very old time Myth, Might and Magic or something like that. And then it went to the Dota 2. And when we saw him playing in stream, we just learned from China and Ukraine, all this. We called it the graphic was very, very bad, and therefore we said this was it was very tough to understand. And then we saw this League of Legends, and then it was very sharp, and the graphic was nice. And then we said, okay, this was League of Legends. That was the Disney version of the Dota, and then his big brother said, yeah, it's much easier, and it was her, you know. So that's why CAPS, he has a big brother who learned him a lot, and then afterwards he had to live up to actually show that the difficulties in the game and technical things, that he was much better. And I just heard from this week that his big brother has done the the opportunity to actually play some league in public places. So that's a huge win for the Christmas time.
Okay, so I won't make you admit which game you prefer, but we'll go to Shae. Shae, how would you advise parents or gamers on which esport to choose, if they, even just for a semi-professional career or just to enjoy or professional?
Well, I think that, we get that question from parents of, what game, and I'm like, just, let your child lead you. I mean, most of our kids started with Roblox and Minecraft, and my kid still at 17 still plays it quite often. So those games are just incredibly creative, but I just think it's, find what you like, find your niche, and you find community with that. We have a lot of kids ask us, okay, well, how do I get to know people in the community? And we advise them to go find the creators you admire, go find the pros that you look up to and learn from them, watch their videos, get active in their Twitch chats, find others that, have those same interests, and you'll find your community and your people to practice with.
Okay, Koen, what about you? What way would you say people to go in terms of which game to choose, given you're such a niche, a really cool niche, but you're a very niche esport. So what?
Yeah. Well, the cool thing in my answer is that I am the gamer that found his way in between all those games, and sometimes I get the question like, aren't you sad you didn't play League of Legends because there's a lot more money involved in that industry? And I'm like, well, probably if I would play League of Legends, I wouldn't have made it. Like, I wouldn't have reached that professional level, because it's just a game that's not my passion. Like, I wouldn't be as dedicated. I wouldn't push as much. I wouldn't put as much effort and time in learning all the mechanics and everything that goes around it. So when I was very young, and that's an advice for parents to let the kids do, they will figure out what suits them. Like, when I was young, I wanted to be Max Verstappen, like 2.0. For the ones that don't know, watch Formula 1 this weekend, of course, with the final coming up. But I wanted to be Max Verstappen. I wanted to be that racing driver, but it was too expensive and too dangerous. That's why I wasn't allowed to do it in real life. And that's when my dad started to try and find racing games online, because he saw that I was interested in racing. He knew I wanted to play racing games. I was always like challenging the family, like being the first to open the door, being the first to do this and that. And it just came back in my personality. And eventually the game Trackmania, after trying many racing games, the game Trackmania just stuck. Like, it was everything that I was looking for as a kid. And my dad found it. I started playing it. One day later, I was better than him. 2 weeks later, I joined an amateur team, a German team. And 10 months after, I joined a professional organization. And that's how quickly it can go once you found it. Like, once you find your game, things can evolve very, very rapidly. Yeah.
Okay, so we're coming close to the end now. So, Koen, I'll stick with you. I've got two questions. First one is, are you a good driver in real life? Or do you drive like you're playing the game? And two, what is the final takeaway you'd want everyone to take from this panel? So first of all, answer the question.
Yeah. Am I a good driver? I believe so. So I actually don't even own a car. I own a motorbike, which is a racing bike. It's a Yamaha R6 2010 limited Rossi edition. I just love speed. I can't deny. So yeah, sometimes I will go a little bit too fast and then drop the bike down to the speed that's actually allowed. But I've also been drifting. Like, I love doing that sort of stuff, or go-karting. So I would say yes. I'm a good driver in real life, and pay attention to the rules. But sometimes, the speed limits are there to be broken. And your second question, basically the thing that I like to give people watching this as a takeaway is the quote that I used earlier, because I just think it has so much value, is we don't stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing. So keep playing.
I love that. As someone who's a giant child, which is why I'm chairing this panel, just to balance the parent aspect out. Shae, what would your final thoughts be for anyone who's watching this panel?
My final thoughts for any parent out there, especially who's watching this panel, is get involved. I mean, go to our website, reach out to us. We'll answer any question. We will connect you to incredible resources. And also take your kid to something that's in person with gaming. There are so many sports organizations that are creating esports things attached to them. Take them to events. COPE will be at DreamHack events. We will be at PAX events. We will be hopefully in TwitchCon Amsterdam if that happens. And we will have the Cope Cabana there, because one of the big things that I noticed as a parent in this space is there was nothing for parents to do when they got to these events. They didn't feel very welcome. They were usually hanging around the edges on their phone, probably texting their kid going, "Are you ready to leave yet?" So we're going to give them a place where they can learn, they can hang out, they can have fun. And, so take your kid to an event. You will be welcome.
Fantastic. And Michael, I'm going to finish with you. After setting you up at Discord, I felt like you were my dad, and then Zoom. But what would you like everyone to know about the parental environment esports from your extensive experiences?
I think it's what I agree with Shae. It's the involvement, and then it's to get in touch with other parents, just like you would do when you go to the soccer club. You should go out and to the events with the children, and you are not supposed to be in the gaming area, but you could be just around, and then you could have a chit chat and talk, and then you will get happy and relaxed, because then you'll find out that it's a lovely way of living.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you so much everyone for a wonderful panel. Anyone who's watching, remember, esports is based in games, but it's really about community and friends and people, and that's the important thing, and it's a lot of amazing benefits for anybody's kids taking part. And I would love all my university students to spend a week working as a CSGO team before they start their group projects, because that's accelerated group work right there. So I think that's it for everyone, so thank you very much.
Seven,